Welcome everyone to Spirit Matters, your daily Bhakti Center podcast, where we discuss ancient spiritual truths from the Bhagavad Gita, and we learn how to apply them in our everyday lives. We are here with our live studio audience on Zoom and with my co-host Achyuta Gopi. Achyuta, how are you doing this morning?
Still sheltered.
Still sheltered. I love it. Love it, love it, love it. I stayed a little late last night at the Bhakti Center for the first time in a long time. Like I stayed and I actually socialized with people, which is unlike me, I knew. And it was really nice. It was kind of worth it. I was like, okay, I can get into this. I could be social.
Don't make that
And
mistake.
I was talking to one of our mutual friends. And I was telling him, I was like, I don't know how you and like the rest of the Kafis do this. Like, I don't know how you stay, because he came and he helped out with the kirtan. He played mridanga, and I was like, I was telling him, I was like, I always want to hear you in kirtan, but you lead at like 11 p.m. after the kirtan ends. I was like, I don't know how you guys do it. Like, if I were to stay till 11 or midnight, I'd just be totally destitute the next day. I'd just be like waking up at like 10 or 11, not knowing what my name is. So kudos to you, Achyuta, for being able to do that.
I was gonna say, I was like, maybe it depends on how old you are, but I was like, actually,
No, I don't think so. Well, that's what I thought too, because I think of like your nephews and stuff, and I'm like, okay, they're young, they can do it. But then I'm like, how do you do it? How does Ananta do it? Like, if I try to stay up that late, I'm destroyed the next day
we
completely.
have really weird sleep habit. Like everybody has a very weird sleep like pattern in my family. There's at some point there's somebody awake at all times.
Oh, yes, yes. Well, amazing. I aspire to be like that one day. I aspire to be able to be awake and just
I mean, I'm like, is it aspirational?
because like there's a devotee that lives in the Bhakti Center. He's a Srila Prabhupada disciple. His name is Arjuna, and like he has some like magical cities, some magical powers. Because I'm like he like barely sleeps, and he's totally okay. Like he's fine, and he's like an older senior, elderly man, and he's just like every single day at Mangal Arti, and like sleeps like 3 or 4 hours a night.
They
And
were
I'm
saying though that kind of naturally happens as you get older.
oh really?
Yeah, one of the things that happens is it's like your body refuses to sleep as much, but luckily with Krishna consciousness that just makes you look like a pure devotee.
There you go. There you go. Amazing. Okay, so we are reading from Bhagavad Gita. We are on chapter 2. I think we read the first 2 verses yesterday. Is that right? I think so.
Yes.
So we shall continue. Please take us away, Achyuta.
Text 3. O son of Pritha, do not yield to this degrading impotence. It does not become you. Give up such petty weakness of heart and arise, O chastiser of the enemy. I like how he's reminding him of their like familial connection. He like
Mm,
calls him O son of Pritha, remind him like you're my cousin. It's our family. We don't run away from battlefields.
mm,
Even though Krishna did famously run away from a battlefield,
true.
which he is forever known by now. But it's like we're not talking about me, we're talking about you. We're not letting you run away. Let's see. Is there anything else that I missed in the purport? Yeah, no, that's the one.
That's the one.
Yeah, that's the one. It's like you wouldn't let my cousin wouldn't run away, would he?
Yeah,
Arjuna
because then,
said, huh?
oh, yeah. No, go for it.
Arjuna said, O killer of enemies, O killer of Madhu, how can I counterattack with arrows in battle men like Bhishma and Drona who are worthy of my worship? It would be better to live in this world by begging than to live at the cost of the lives of great souls who are my teachers. Even though desiring worldly gain, they are superiors. If they are killed, everything we enjoy will be tainted with blood. I always felt like these verses were a little bit dramatic.
They are a little bit dramatic.
Just a little bit. I mean,
A little bit.
And then I was thinking about the gravity of the situation. I was like, I mean, well, 600 million people, give or take, did did perish,
mm,
and then hundreds of thousands more were missing. So yes, but there is something about, like, when we get into that downward spiral and
mm,
we really start to feel like literally the fate of the entire world is
mm,
on our shoulders. And that's usually when me or my sister will stop either one of us. Well, usually it's like my sister will stop me, I will stop others. And we put forth the question. It's like, wait, are you the controller?
mm,
Are you Krishna? Because otherwise, we have to stop ourselves in that spiral. And I can feel like that. We can really feel like, if I do this, my entire family's gonna crumble. Even if, and it's like, even if they're wrong,
mm,
it's like these people are, they've consistently not had your best interests at heart,
mm,
and yet you continue running over there to try and lay yourself down in front of them.
mm,
And I really like that the entire purpose of Bhagavad Gita is to tell Arjuna to not be a doormat. Like, it's like, what
mm,
what are you doing? You don't go and just lay down in front of the people who have been trying to systematically kill you.
mm,
And so I think it's super important, for us to get out of the mindset that we can control every outcome.
mm. Mm. And I think that's super interesting too, because when we are in the mindset that we can control every outcome, and when we think we're the controller, and when we start to feel that weight on our shoulders of like, oh my God, if I do this one thing, or if I mess up, or if I am not able to do or whatever, and actually it's so disempowering, you know? And it's such an interesting what's the word, it's such an interesting like dissonance that happens in the mind, because we think that by convincing ourselves that I am the controller, or that I am in control all the time, that somehow is going to be empowering, right? Like,
Mm.
if we look at like the modern situation that we're in, it's like that's what it is, all the ads and stuff, it's just building up our egos, it's just telling us like we're the best, you're the one, you're going to make it happen, it's just like all this kind of stuff. And it's like, actually, that kind of stuff really really builds you up, so that when it does feel like it's all on your shoulders, then the what ends up happening is what's happening to Arjuna, like becoming a doormat. I really like that language that you use, because we start to realize like, wait a minute, everything isn't actually in my control, and now I'm having like a nervous breakdown, now I'm having like an anxiety attack, and like crying and like this. And so I think that that's a really interesting dissonance that people tend to have, it's like, mm,
It's like the word of socialism, dichotomy.
mhm,
But yeah, I mean, we can, like you said, it's supposed to be an empowering feeling, but it winds up actually being just a big burden. And it's a huge burden on the shoulders. And it's kind of amazing how Arjuna's really looking at, he's like, there are people who are worthy of my worship. And the first thing Krishna told him, it's like, give up that idea immediately. And it really calls into question who we are putting on a pedestal, who is actually worthy of our worship. He's looking at these people, he's like, you know what, he's like, arise, fight, do the things. And he's like, but that's my family. He's like, I said what I said. They didn't act like family. And so, we really have to think about people's actions in families, in spiritual communities, etc., etc., etc. The list goes on. And we really have to think about how their actions are affecting us,
mm,
and really authentically stand up for ourselves.
mm.
I really think that it's so important that Krishna, he's going to be driving this point home for the rest of the Bhagavad Gita, that you've got to look at people's actions. We've got to look at our own actions. And then we've got to look at the mindset that is driving those actions, because that will determine our next circumstances and our next environments and sets of actions. And so we can think, oh, my obligation is to my family just because they are my family.
Mm,
My obligation is to my elders simply because they are my elders. My obligation is to this spiritual group of leaders just because they are the leaders.
mm,
And Krishna here is right off the bat. He's like, no, 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 no. You've got to look and see, are they acting like leaders? Are they protecting you like leaders? Do they even have your best interests anywhere near at heart?
mm.
And if not, then you do what you have to do, which does not, we're not saying go kill the people, but you can respectfully step away and out of that situation.
Mm, mm. I think that's super important what you're saying, because a lot of the times we get lost in, well, this is just how it is, or they're just my family, or it's just the rules. That's just, it is what it is. And that kind of loss of an ability to go deeper and really ask the bigger questions is really dangerous, actually. Because, and the reason it gets super dangerous is because, as we've been seeing Arjuna does, and he does it for our benefit and as an example, is, these we've spoken about this theme a lot now, but these words like love and compassion and etc., they get misused and misconstrued and misunderstood because they're hidden in kind of like lofty ideals or lofty philosophy. And he continues to do it here, right? So in the purport of verse 3, Srila Prabhupada is saying that Arjuna, this is towards the end of the purport. And he says, Arjuna might argue that he would give up the battle on the grounds of his magnanimous attitude for the most respectable Bhishma and his relatives. But Krishna considered that sort of magnanimity mere weakness of heart. Such false magnanimity was not approved by any authority. Therefore, such magnanimity or so-called non-violence should be given up by persons like Arjuna under the direct guidance of Krishna. And I love how this point keeps on coming up again. It's like, yeah, so-called nonviolence, so-called magnanimity, so-called love, so-called compassion. And I really love Bhakti Yoga so much because, I mean, it really kind of like asks you to dive a lot deeper into the meanings of these words, because we have a very superficial understanding of like love, nonviolence and all this stuff, to the point of like appropriation, like to the point of like nonviolence is like a brand now, it's like nonviolence.
Ahimsa.
Yeah, ahimsa. And it's just like, okay, but like when and what and how and under whose authority and who said so and like what does it really mean, and consider the source, which you always like to say, right? It's like, where is this nonviolence actually coming from? Like, who is telling you to be nonviolent, and what does your nonviolence actually look like? So very important
Yeah.
point.
And I think, just as we were reading that purport, I was thinking how incredibly revolutionary it is that Srila Prabhupada would start people off coming into a spiritual organization with a book that is telling them, never ever give up your free thinking power. And then people, like, they commence to completely give up their free thinking. But we started with a book with purports, many purports, that continuously tell us, do not give up your free thinking power. This
Mm,
false magnanimity, we have an idea. false humility. You got this idea of how can I be more humble? And it does not mean to be a doormat. Like, it's like Krishna's like, but look at these people that are worthy of worship. If they tried to kill you, you should not go back over there. Like,
Mm,
simple. And if we're going to go back over there and you're going to try and get your kingdom back, then we're going to fight for it. And I have been in many, many situations, and I've had to say things to people, things like, this conversation's making me uncomfortable and I'm not having it anymore. And then I turn around and people are like, but that was a Prabhupada disciple. I was like, I don't care. I'm a grand disciple. And the conversation was making me uncomfortable. Like, at what point am I,
mm,
the entirety of
mm.
Bhagavad Gita is about do not give up. My goodness.
We have our New York background noise.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So funny. I was listening to a lecture um, on Bhagavad Gita, incidentally,
Mm,
and it was Srila Prabhupada in 1966. Halfway through the lecture, sirens. I was
mm.
like, nothing has changed.
Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. I love this point that you're bringing up because I forgot that I was going to make that point while I was talking because you already made that point. We're making the same point, which is
Let's
that
make it.
which is that when we give up our free thinking power and we become doormats, um, we start to not question things. And that can happen in families, that can happen in relationships, but it can also happen and does happen all the time in like institutions. And a lot of the time, one starts to think like, oh, well, just because I'm a part of this institution, that means that like everything's okay and I should just do everything they say and everything is like, just hunky dory and like peace and nonviolence, ahimsa. And it's like, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. Like, no, that's actually not true. Like like you said, if something is making you uncomfortable, then you're in charge of you. And it's like, okay, I'm gonna either put up my boundaries and say something, or I'm gonna be a doormat. And literally the example given to us by Arjuna and Krishna in Bhagavad Gita is don't be a doormat. Like, get up, do something. Actually, we'll get to this in chapter 3, but Krishna says, actually, no one can stop doing anything at any time. Everyone is constantly at the behest. I'm paraphrasing this. Everyone is constantly at the behest of their conditioned nature.
It was really well paraphrased, though. Behest. I really like that word.
Yes. I love that word. And it's like, yeah, it's like we can't just be like, oh, it's not, whatever. Like they said, it's like, no, like something's gonna come up. It's either gonna come up in action, it's gonna come up in our heart as bitterness or resentment, it's gonna come up somewhere. And so better to resolve the issue, better to have it kind of like outright instead of just like I don't know if hiding is the word, but instead of kind of just like, yeah, blanket acceptance of like, well, it's my family, or well, it's the institution, or like, well, it's my best friend, they just like treat me like that. I'm like, whatever.
And I think part of that blanket acceptance is such a deep yearning and longing for acceptance that you
Mhm.
are willing to give over your autonomy and give over so much of yourself because you want to be accepted, because you want there to be somebody who's going to care and be in charge, and somebody that you can give that trust and of kind of like your life over to.
Mm,
And yet we continuously do that with other people who are bound to make mistakes because that's who living entities are. It's just part of the deal. And we keep refusing to do that with Krishna.
mm,
It's so backwards.
mm,
And so I like to, think about these existential kind of things where I'm like, I've been giving over my trust to so many people. Meanwhile, Krishna every day, I'm just here. I've just been asking. If
mm,
you give it to me,
mm,
we can't go wrong. We're a dream team. And I'm like, no, Krishna, I can't give it to you. And that would be way too much surrender. Let me go on over here, surrender to this person who doesn't and can't fulfill any of those desires.
mm,
And so it's almost like we are intentionally setting ourselves up for failure.
mm.
And it's like being afraid, that much afraid of success,
Mm,
that we would rather set ourselves up for failure again and again. And then we question, like, well, like, why can't people just, it's like, that's the nature of people. But the supreme person is telling you, this is my nature, this is how I do things, this I'm gonna take care of everything for you. And we're like, nah, I can't do that. Can't do that. But we are longing to be accepted so
mm,
much in the heart that we are constantly looking for someone to surrender to.
mm.
We just always seem to misplace it.
Yeah, and it's really interesting this point that you bring up because we're so thirsty for that acceptance that a lot of the times people put up with a lot of garbage. They put up with a lot of abuse. They put up with a lot of, just really, really bad situations because they're longing so much for that acceptance. And I think that point that you're making is so beautiful and at the same time like telling, and it's a good reminder. It's like, wait a minute, like here's the book of Gita, and in all of the sacred texts, Krishna is telling us to surrender to him, to that he accepts us, that we can have a deep loving relationship with him, and not just like a surface level love. No, no, no. Like all of the acharyas, all of the saints, all of the teachers have like delineated exactly how to like get super duper deep into this relationship with Krishna. And we're just like, nah, that's too much. That's like too hard. I can't do that. That's a lot. But I can get into this like crazy weird, whatever situation I got going over here with this person. And it's a really good reminder that we're not going to get everything that we need from people. Like it's just a reminder that I think we need to keep on hearing over and over again, that we're not going to get everything that we need from other people. And sometimes we try to like smush people into boxes of like, okay, well, I'm going to get my social stuff from this person, I'm going to get my love stuff from this person, and I'm going to get my whatever business funny stuff from over, it's like, and it's like it doesn't work that way, because we're all looking for something deeper, we're all longing for something deeper. And when you're trying to get that deeper thing from a person, it doesn't go well, because you start to realize like, wait a minute, like they're just like a person and they're just going through it. And why, it's like you're shaking, why isn't it
Yeah.
working?
And, like, basically what happens is that longing for acceptance, when you think about it, there are people in so many situations, abusive situations, all this stuff. And you're like, well, why did you stay? Well, I thought, and this and that. But what they did was they surrendered. But the problem is when you surrender to other limited, fallible jivas or living entities, they can't uphold the other side of that bargain. You are putting them in a contract that they are bound to fail
Mm,
with. And so now I want to ask myself each day, like, what is it that I've surrendered to this day?
mm,
Because I guarantee there was something in there that I surrendered to. And was it worthy of my surrender? And if not, then why am I still holding back from surrendering to Krishna, who actually is the only one who can fulfill the other half of that contract? So it's like, if I see you, Kishore, and I'm like, what, Kishore, I cannot believe you. We were supposed to be friends and we were supposed to do this, this, and this. And you're like, you never even spoke to me about that. And I'm like, but that's what friendship means to me. And that's what we were supposed to do. And you're like, I was never a part of that agreement. But that is what we do every day when we surrender to other people and circumstances and situations. We are surrendering and laying down ourselves in all this vulnerability. And sometimes the other person didn't even ask for that. A lot of times they did not ask for that. And I come into that often. Like, there will be people who'll send me emails and certain things, and I'm like, I didn't ask for any of this. You need God. Like, you need a different, like, you need to email God, because I didn't ask for this part. And so, in a certain way, we were talking about role models last week, and Arjuna's looking and he's like, these are the people that are worthy of worship. And the first thing role models say is, I didn't ask for this, but we kind of did when you sign up for the fame part. But the surrender, we have to really catch ourselves, because that is something that we start projecting onto somebody else. As
Mhm.
I surrender, this person will what? Because as you surrender, I will reward you accordingly. It's only Krishna that can say that. Like the other people, they are fallible and did not sign up for that contract. So we really have to be careful in looking at what and who did I surrender to today, and are they actually worthy of that? Meaning, did they actually sign up for that? Can they uphold the other half of that bargain?
Mm. I was laughing a lot because I was having a conversation the other day with Jai Jagannath and Janavi, and the three of us are like, me and Janavi more like very indecisive, especially when it comes to like planning outings and being social and just like all this. I'm like, and we were just laughing at the three. We were laughing at ourselves because like we couldn't plan this thing that we were trying to do. We were just like, I don't know, are you going? Are you not going? I'm like, I don't know. And I'm very resolute. I'm always just like, I don't know. I'll see, I'll see. And like literally I decided at the last moment. And I was telling them, I was, because they were like, oh, we're so bad, we're so flaky. And I said, in my defense, I was just like, I don't mind being flaky actually, because I never actually say yes to people. I always say maybe or I don't know, because I really like to go places and do things that I feel like I really want to be there, not out of like an obligation. Like my worst nightmare is being somewhere in a social situation where I'm just like, I don't want to be here. I just want to be in my home. And I'm like, that way, they're not expecting anything from me. And it's very clear that it's up to the very last
Yo,
moment.
Breg's reaction in the chat is
He knows.
classic.
He knows. So if it like that way, people's expectations are low because like, your night isn't going to be made by me or not by me, whatever. And it's like, obviously, this is a fun personal example, but I think on a bigger meta level, it's like, yeah, it's like we tend to put people into these boxes or sign these, think that like people signed this contract with us of like, you're supposed to be this for me, and it's like, unless like we're married or something, which I'm about to be married, so Brudge can laugh all he wants. Because I have some responsibility to him. But unless we're like married or something, like, I didn't sign a contract with you. It's like your contract is actually with God. Your contract is, if you want it, actually. What's really interesting? It's like God, Krishna has already like for eternity been signing that contract. He's like, look, I'm gonna keep signing it. I'm gonna keep on going. I'm gonna keep
Every day,
every
every
day.
day.
And we're just like, mm,
I don't know. I can't sign. I can't close the deal.
I'm gonna go sign these imaginary contracts with people over here that have no idea what I'm doing.
They haven't signed it. I'm the only one that signed it. They haven't even seen the contract. I'm just putting all this stuff on them. And then God every single day is like, I've signed this contract lifetimes ago. I'm still signing it. I will continue to sign it every day. I will show up at your door outside of it singing every single day until you pay attention to me. And we continuously give our attention to everything else. And that makes me feel like that makes us make God look like a really sad boyfriend, you know? Like it's really sad. Like if I saw the dude going every day, he's like Stan, I just be like, homie, come this way. Let's leave them alone. They're not gonna be there for you. But Krishna never leaves,
Mm,
ever.
mm,
Even if you've done the most abominable thing, Krishna is still showing up the next day with the contract. Okay, you ready? Because all it takes is one moment, one signature. We could sign this, and we could be on our merry way. But yes, instead we start signing these other imaginary contracts. I kind of like. I wish, I wish that your tactic worked with me, because
mm,
I do that a lot with service. I say, I don't know, I have to see and get back to you, and the people do not allow me to get back to them.
mm,
It's happened 3 times in the past like 3 weeks.
Mm.
It's like somebody's like, "Oh, so are you good for kirtan this day?" And I was like, "No, no, 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 no. See, this is why I have things in writing." I did not agree. I said I have to see and check with the schedule. How are you asking me if I'm good for something I never agreed to? Oh, well, I thought so. Then the things already went out. Like I already told people. I'm like, I don't know why you did that. It's not fair. I don't know why you did that.
You got to be explicit at shoot. I'm like super explicit. I'm like, I don't know. Maybe. No, I have not confirmed. Because I also do that when people ask me for stuff. I'm just like, I don't know. They're like, when can you let me know? I'm like, maybe at some point in the later next week. I'm like
You
super.
know what? It like the thing is, and this is why, like some people think where they'll get a weird idea in their minds, they're like, oh well, I don't know. She's like really hard to deal with. I'm actually not hard to deal with. What happens is somebody will ask me for a service and I say, I don't know, I have to check my schedule. And they're like, well, when will you know? And I'm like, well, it seems like you're really intense. Do you need to know right now? Because if you need to know right now, the answer is no.
Mm,
And then everybody's like, oh, but why would you say that? And I'm like, because I don't think I can do it right now. What do you mean? Like, I don't it's like the actual the progression of things is you are not allowed to say no. You must say yes. And I'm like, but what if the answer really is I don't know? And
mm,
they're like, well, I need to know right now. And that happened to somebody. They're like, I need to know right now. I was like, the answer is no. And they're
mm,
like, well, that's rude. And I was like, it's not rude to say no to a service. I can't do it. What are you talking about?
mm,
I can't do it. And you need to know right now. So if
mm.
I don't have the room to think about it, the answer is no.
Yeah.
If you
And I
can give
think
me the space in the room to think about it, then the answer is maybe.
And I think that's super important because just we're running out of time here. Just to bring it back, it's like that space to think about things is extremely important. And I
Especially
feel
for
like,
me.
and we need, yeah, and we need to like give, and the thing is that like no one's gonna give that to you. Like you have to give it to yourself, actually. Like you have to be the one to be like, wait a minute, I have boundaries. I'm going to give myself space to think about this. And if other people get all tied up in a knot about it, well, that's fine, because it's better that I take my time and really, really, be conscientious about things instead of going back to our Junix example, instead of getting into a dissonant space where I'm like, saying yes to everything. And then all of a sudden everything's on my shoulders. And all of a sudden I think that I'm in control of everything. And all of a sudden I think, oh my God, if I say no to this service, or if this person thinks I'm rude, everything's just gonna fall apart. Right. Because that's where Arjuna is, right? If I fight this, everything's just gonna fall apart. Like the world's progeny is gonna get like destroyed. Like everything
The
is just
entire thing. Society's gonna crumble.
society's gonna crumble. And it's like, wait a minute, wait a minute. We need to de-escalate this situation. But it's like I've been there, and it's like we can all get there to that place where it's like everything is so heavy on our shoulders that we're thinking one little mess up and everything's gonna crumble. And it's like we have this beautiful example. And we'll get more into it as we continue reading Bhagavad Gita, that like actually that's not the way, that's not the path. And Krishna is gonna educate Arjuna, which I'm very excited to continue to read
Yeah.
on. But we are fresh out of time, so we will take it away to Kimberly, our master taker awayer. What takeaways you got for us today, Kimberly?
Today we're walking away with don't be a doormat or give up your free thinking power. Authentically stand up for yourself. We aren't going to get everything we need from limited or fallible people. And that us and Krishna are a dream team.
Yes, we are
Yeah.
the team. I love it. Thank you so much, Kimberly. What you walking away with today, Achyuta?
Just that last point of being okay with authentically being and embodying and expressing who you are, even in spiritual circles, relationship circles, no matter this circle. And I think that anybody who's dealt with me for a long time knows that if you desire a snap response from me about anything, the answer probably will not be what you think or what you would like.
Hmm.
And I think that I've been growing into a place of allowing that to be okay. I
Hmm.
don't give snap responses. I think about things, I mull it over, I take a nap, I literally sleep on it.
Sandwich.
I eat a sandwich, but and I've been allowing that to be okay. I've
Mm,
been allowing that to be like, no, this is me, and me. This is also spiritual. Um, and I think allowing us ourselves the response time, and
mm,
allowing others the response time is really important. Like if somebody says, I can't address this right now, we don't have to take it as an affront
mm,
toward us. Like, how could you? Well, what do you like? Maybe you don't actually want a snap response decision.
mm,
Like, maybe the whole, everything would blow over if you allowed that person the space and the time, and you allowed yourself the space and the time to think about what it is that we're interacting with each other about.
mm, Yeah, I'm also walking away with that because I think that in general, everyone has to slow down a little bit more. I think that our society and the way that we process and the way that we think is like extremely fast. And of course, technology has made that even worse. We're just very like on to the next thing and the next email and the next text and the next. And I've been like making a conscious effort to be like, no, I'm not going to look at my phone for a few hours. So,
Yeah.
so if you text me during that time, I might not get back to you. Sometimes I get messages from people like, did you respond to this person? They've been trying to reach out to you. I'm like, yeah, I know. I'll get to them. Don't worry. And it's just like, it's okay. Like your text back to the person or whatever, it's not, unless obviously if it's an emergency, that's a different thing. But more often than not, it's not an emergency. And so it's like giving yourself time to just like be and process and feel what you're feeling is extremely important. So I'm walking away with that as well. Okie dokie. Thank you all so much for such a beautiful conversation today. Thank you, Achuta. Thank you, live studio audience, for all of your fun, fun comments. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We'll be here tomorrow at 9 a.m. and we will continue discussing this chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita. Thank you all so much. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Bye, folks.